Yo. Come on. Whoa. Who want smoke? Who want smoke? All right, we cut it. Yo, it's crazy. It's disrespectful. It's disrespectful. You know, the thing about it is, like, it take for Chris Brown to come out for the shit to get real out here in this battle game thing. Because we had the J. Cole shit. Then everybody want to jump on it. Drake's over here firing at Kendrick. Kendrick's nowhere to be found. Rose got involved. All these motherfuckers wanted to jump on the bandwagon. And it took for Chris Brown to come out here and start loading the chopper, firing it, threw this motherfucker plane all over the graffiti wall like a masterpiece. Like literally just split him open and sprayed his blood all over the wall. How you feel about that? Like that's
yeah, some shit you just don't say.
So you think he was wrong for saying that? I mean, because, like, you got to think about it. When it comes to battle rap or hip hop, when it becomes nasty and we got these, like, battles going on when it comes to the music, it get nasty. You go to battle rap and they say things in battle rap. If you go to an underground battle rap, you know what I mean, gig, they say shit. They come at you. They pick at your weak spots. You know what I mean? Like, the goal is to end you in the battle game. So you got to come for the jugular. I think that's what that was. I'm not sure, though. Again, ain't no journalist over here. Just someone with an opinion. I'm not sure what triggered that. Do you? I know maybe, I don't know. There might have been a slight diss and then Chris was just waiting to, like, unload on somebody because.
I mean, there's some history there. I guess they've had.
Clearly, there's history.
Beef before. Interested in the same women, some sort of crossover, whatever.
Always about the women.
Quavo said something on a song. Maybe the song is called Tender or something like that. Where he talked about
that's what it was.
Chris speeding women or whatever.
Got it. And then Chris responded. This was Chris' response.
Chris came back. And you know, like, you want to talk about somebody's significant other cheating on them with you. Well, okay. Whatever. If you think that's like a thing that like gets you points, all right, cool.
Where you feel like
you
he
gonna
crossed
talk
the
about
line, though?
somebody's dead relatives?
I know. And then said people wished it was you. That was like
that's just come on, fam. Like what are you really trying to do?
But
bro?
This goes back to the conversation around like what's, where's crossing the line.
Everybody has different lines. Clearly, to Chris Brown, that was a line that
ain't it like no women, children, and like deceased
even
people?
If it was a line for him, he was willing to cross it, so it's not a line anymore.
You think he did that because he felt like he had a point to prove? Especially now, because everybody's looking at people that are throwing diss tracks out there, like kind of with a side eye. You know what I mean? Because ever since that Kendrick shit.
It just seems really, really personal. Like.
Emotional.
Because like, you can talk, I smashed your girl, blah, blah, blah. And that can still be sort of like play. Particularly the people are not still together. They were never married. It is, this shit is fluid. It's Hollywood. It's the music industry. Who knows who's doing what on any given night, right? You talk about somebody's relative that got murdered and like it's still a very fresh, unresolved situation.
So you think it's fighting words? Like you think that
I think that a lot of things that get said in rap today are absolutely fighting words, right?
They're supposed to be, right?
I don't know if they're supposed to be. I think that
it's a battle. They're supposed to be jabs. They're supposed to be left hooks.
I think that back in the days, those kind of fighting words turned to something else.
Ugly, yeah, that's war. Mm-hmm.
I think that in the industry now it's acceptable to say all kinds of shit and it's just on wax, blah blah. But I mean that's a that's a cultural difference between then and now. We are where we are now, right? And like people say crazy shit all the time. And I just wonder, like, is this something that, like, if you and this person were one-on-one and it wasn't, like, to go out on streams or it wasn't to go out on radio, Is this a conversation that y'all would have face to face with nobody watching?
I don't think so.
Or are you just amping this shit up and amping it up because
But that's why I asked the question.
turns it into a product?
But that's why I'm asking the question, especially right now when it started out with Kendrick and J. Cole, and then the fallout, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then that kind of got weak and like, oh, this is bullshit, y'all lying in y'all raps, whatever. And now, because he's an R&B singer, because he's that light-skinned, soft-ass, he felt like he had to double down or come a little hard, because if you're going to put out a diss track, like, it has to be...
Is Chris Brown viewed
Is it
as
shock
soft,
value?
though?
Is it shock value? Some people... I mean, he responded. Quavo responded. Every time somebody wants to diss Chris Brown, they go to the domestic violence, him being a light-skinned singing nigga, and, like, you know what I'm saying, dancing, whatever. Like, people don't take him serious.
Quavo said a lot of things.
But the thing that he hammers down the most is...
I think that Quavo also crossed certain lines in response, right? Like, once you're talking about somebody's mental health, if people have substance abuse
or him
stuff,
being in that, yeah, like,
you know, any of that, like, you know, and like somebody crosses the line, somebody crosses the line back, you know, blah, blah, whatever. But like, I don't know, bro. Like, I feel like Chris Brown is someone who gets, at the very least, a lot of collaborations in the industry, which might be a sign of like he has some respect in the music industry.
I mean, get it
from hip hop people and R&B people and now Afrobeat people. He was on that track with Busta. He was not slouching on that track. You know, like, it's, I mean, I think that people know that Chris has skills. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think they challenge him because he's still getting boxed out of places because of the Rihanna situation,
for sure.
because of the things that have been going on.
And some people would say rightfully so.
Some people would.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that, can you separate the artist from the human being?
We've talked about this before. Absolutely you can.
Do you believe everybody deserves another shot?
What does everybody mean?
So are we selective on who deserves another shot and who does not?
Well, it just depends on what everybody means. Are we talking about like somebody who?
Okay, Chris Brown. We're talking about Chris Brown. Let's stay on
Chris Brown specifically.
Do you believe
right?
that Chris Brown deserved another chance at this artistry thing, at redefining himself, at, you know, getting spaces, performing on big platforms? Do you think that like, he deserves that, or do you think that he's someone that he should not be performing today?
I absolutely do not think that he's someone who shouldn't be performing. I think that's a wild stance to take, right? Like, this is somebody who was young, somebody who clearly has certain things going on. He's come out that he's bipolar. Like, having grace for people who admit that they have a problem and admit that they've had a shortcoming and et cetera, is, I think, what we're supposed to do as human beings.
Yeah. And like, how do you, like, one of the things that I just finished saying, everybody's shot at him is his shortcomings in the past, or what he did, or the Rihanna situation. And like, that being always the ammo in some people's loaded pistol, you know what I'm saying? Is like, you're always going to have this on your back. This stain does not go away. And some people, like you said earlier, some people will, you know, oblige and be like, nah, you're not allowed on in this space. I'm not going to let you perform. And he'll get pulled. But like, how do you pick and choose who gets that grace and who doesn't get that grace? You know what I mean? And is that situational? I mean, obviously, because some platforms will allow him to be there and some won't. So obviously that's situational, because it depends on the platform and what their, you know, I don't want to say moral compass is, but like, whatever their...
I mean, I think that, again, right? Like, there's no preset rules. If someone is shown that they have changed, that they've reformed, that they've shown some sort of acknowledgement that what they did was wrong and that it's something that they shouldn't do and something that they shouldn't continue to do, I think that people can reform. I think that people can, like, nobody is only their worst thing that they've done. People have layers and dimensions to them. Just like nobody is only the best thing that they've done. You know what I mean? Like it works both ways. And sometimes people give grace to celebrities, to rich people, to famous people because, oh, they've done all these amazing things, to politicians, to leaders. Oh, they've done all these amazing things, and we're willing to brush some of the bad things that they've done under the rug, you know? And it's like, bro, like, human beings are human.
But like Trump, who gets
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
And then gets to run for president.
Right.
Obama would have never been able to do that.
Facts.
Like ever.
Right. I don't think that's even theoretical. I think we know that that's absolutely true.
It's
right?
insane. I don't even want to
so
talk
it's
about
like so it's like, you know, the pick and choose and what's the context of when we forgive somebody or when we don't forgive somebody or blah blah. I mean, it's mostly an academic conversation as well, right? Because like if you're talking about somebody who's an artist, whose career, whose livelihood is based on whether people will buy their music, whether people will buy tickets to come to their show, it kind of proves itself, right? Because like we always talk about, oh, so-and-so is canceled. And it's like, what does that mean, right? Like you get canceled by people who hold one view and you get embraced by people who hold the opposite view. You know what I'm saying? And like this idea that we can cancel someone, we can collectively come together and make sure that they don't have a career, that they never succeed again, or they never get to make art again, or blah, blah. There's a lot of hubris and there's a lot of ego in that, right? Because like, just because something is not for me, all right, cool. I don't participate in that thing. But that doesn't mean that other people don't get to participate in it. You know what I mean? The idea that like, wow, this is going in different places. We started with Chris Brown and, the domestic violence situation. And like, people do or get caught on tape doing racist things, right? And they might lose their job or they might lose their TV show or their radio show. And then they pop up not too long afterwards with another job, another TV show, another radio show. And it's like, this court of public opinion, I think that sometimes it gets traded in for what the real reckoning, what the real consequences should be for doing harm. Because it's like, oh yeah, we collectively came together and made you infamous for something and caused you this inconvenience for this time, but then you bounce back and maybe we drive you further to the side of that view that we didn't agree with, because now it seems like we're not going to offer you any grace. We're not going to offer you any understanding. We're not going to see any nuance in the situation. It's just an absolute. And like, I get it, right? Like sometimes you see things that to you are so heinous, you're like, I could never forgive that person. You know what I mean? You see things that to you are so heinous, you're like, this person should just no longer be able to exist or blah, blah. And I feel like that's just way extreme, bro. Like, I don't believe in the death penalty, and I just don't believe that, like, there are things that, let me make sure that's true. There may be some things that are unforgivable, but I think that people slap the unforgivable label on things that are not that unforgivable.
I think everybody wants to be the judge of somebody else instead of just looking at themselves in the mirror. Everybody got their own shit, right?
Figuring out what they don't like about themselves, figuring out what they would make better. Yep.
And just want to point and be the judge and be responsible for someone else's demise. And that's sick. And like, don't get me wrong, are there people that deserve, like accountability? Like, what does that look like? Who determines what accountability looks like?
Who
right?
determines what people are held accountable for?
You know what I mean? Some people would be like the victim, right? The person that was harmed by something gets to say what that accountability looks like. And then if that person or the person that is the harmed person, if they decide that they don't know what accountability looks like, then what does that mean? We hold the person that did the harm to the utmost degree of for however long. Like, what's the sentence on that? And like, that goes into like community spaces and community accountability and restorative justice. And people like to talk about restorative justice, or people like to use that term so loosely, and no one actually is standing in the circle of restorative justice collectively. I'm not saying no one. There are people out here doing work like in pockets where you have to go seek. I know there's a founder of the restorative justice so-and-so over here that works with, God forgive me, or y'all forgive me, gentlemen forgive me, who runs the organization. But I saw him on the TED Talk, and he runs a restorative justice program, particularly for incarcerated Black men.
Mm-hmm.
So where are the spaces that, accountability when it's not in a trial, right? We'll be like, no, keep the Black people out of jail, and we don't want to go the legal route in terms of calling the police and getting accountability that way, or justice, quote unquote, or that idea of justice that way.
Right.
So then what do we do as a community, right, when someone does harm? And you're not saying go through the court system, but also it's like going through the court system when you're taking away, right, and you're punishing said person. And it's even more harmful when there's no space, or there isn't a space that is the word I'm looking for, monitoring, or like who's the moderator, right? That gets to decipher or listen to both parties in that situation. And oftentimes in like society or whatever movement is going on, they'll sway to one story or the other without actually getting justice, because now you're deciding, okay, I'm the judge, cancel you. But a lot of times that's the person that's actually being harmed. And then it's just like this twisted idea. Then we take away someone's career. It's like, how do we as a people, as a community, be better and like organizing, or maybe organizing is the wrong word, but where are the spaces that can come together to create vulnerability within like growing or accountability, or I've tried to do that back in 2018 when I had the Boys and Bullshit Collective, and I was really trying to run an organization for masculine centered queer identifying folks to really push and have conversations and create spaces that are, we can be vulnerable, we can break down our own barriers, we can do our own inner work. And, that was my shot at resource. Like, there are no resources for accountability or restorative justice, but those are the things people say that need to happen. Well, you need to do this. You need to be accountable. You need to hold yourself accountable. Your accountability needs to be louder than the harm done. Okay, so then where do I start? And oftentimes no one knows where to start. And their true intention is like, yeah, I may have caused harm, but like there's so many other things that I have to break down. Where do I go? Is there someone to help? And oftentimes people drown in that, and they're like, and when you outcast a person, then they resort to it could either go really bad, or it could be like survival mode, right? Both are survival mode. One is like, I'm out of here, I can't take this shit no more. And the other is like, all right, I'm searching for something. I'm searching for help. I'm grasping at straws sometimes. I'm, out here in this desperation for a resource, and a lot of times we don't have them. So like, what does that mean for community, and how do we build within our own circles so that it becomes a ripple effect? Because we're talking Chris Brown, and we're talking these big names, and we're talking accountability and how we hold people accountable, and what we choose, how we choose to allow them to do their art, right? Like, we get to dictate what that looks like. But like, where's the work? Like, you cast them away and expect them to do work, but how do we learn the work, especially when we're coming from broken homes and broken environments, which is why we're there to begin with, right? Like,
yeah, and I think, I think it's interesting, right? Like, we say whether we're allowing them to do their art or not. And honestly, like, that's not even what it is, right? Because like, you can't stop someone from singing, writing music,
right,
dancing, et cetera, right? Like, we're literally talking about, do we still allow them to have a platform for people to give them money for their art, right? En masse. And it's like, again, this is something that you can't stop, right? Like, if there are people who want to give their money to someone, you cannot stop them from doing it.
But sometimes it's not even money. It's the look. It's the politics. It's the politics of it. I think that's the beautiful part about being a creative and an artist is that, like, Chris Brown wears many hats. Like, okay, you don't want him over there, but he can do this and he can do that and he can find another lane to be able to explore. We don't know him as a rapper, but when he comes out and does stuff like this, it's kind of hard to hate on a kid. Like, he is just extremely talented and he deserves another chance to live his life. Like, you can't, I don't know. I don't believe in disposing. I don't believe in disposing of anybody. I don't. I too don't believe in a death penalty. Like, that's not for us to decide. You know what I mean? Like, what you have to sow. And yeah. And then the Kanye thing, like, Kanye comes out and jumps on the diss thing, the diss. Like,
they didn't try to cancel Kanye so many times.
He's not gonna go nowhere. He's like the gnat that just flies around and you like keep swatting. And
I would say he's more than that, right? Like, Kanye,
he fired. Don't get me wrong. I'm not belittling him to a gnat.
But I mean,
I'm just saying.
No, I think that it's more than just annoyance, right? Like, he has a certain wave of energy that he brings, that he rides, that he amplifies, that people are very, very attracted to, right? And like, some people might describe him as a gnat, and the reason why I like buck back against that is like, I don't know that he's a gnat, right? Like, I think that there's something much deeper going on there, right? Like, Kanye is the kind of person, and again, like, people point out his mental health issues and often try to use that against him, right? Try to use that to diminish what he's saying or what he feels or how he presents in the world or et cetera, and it's like, there's a certain archetype of these kind of like genius, quirky creatives that Kanye kind of squarely falls into, except for this one factor, which is he's a black kid from Chicago, right? And so it's like, yeah, you can be quirky, but can you be that quirky? Can you be Matthew McConaughey, butt naked in his house, high on weed, playing the bongos, saying all kinds of crazy stuff when the cops show up, right? Nah, because you're Kanye, right? It's like there's this kind of like, and certainly not endorsing all of the things that Kanye has said or done in his career, right? But defending from the standpoint of free speech, from the standpoint of someone who's an artist who creates art that touches and reaches many, many people and resonates with so many people on such a deep level, right? Like, why is there this huge push to be like, oh, we got to get rid of Kanye. We can't have Kanye, right? And it kind of like reminds you of some of the stuff that happened with Michael Jackson, right? And it's like, well, was he guilty? Wasn't he guilty? All these accusations, all these attempts to cancel him, to get rid of him, right? And whether those accusations were true or not, all of the ways that people tried to prove them didn't really pan out. So do we say, all right, you had your shot at proving the accusations, and now we have to dismiss them because you couldn't prove them? Or is this a specter that continues to hang over his career, his music, et cetera, right? Like, as someone who does a lot of performances for private events, weddings, where you would typically, wedding bands play a lot of Michael Jackson music, and you have weddings that you get booked for where people like, you cannot play any Michael Jackson music, or you can play Jackson 5, but nothing later than that. Or, and it's like, yeah, some people are willing to separate the art from the artist. Some people are not willing to separate the art from the artist. And it's like, yeah, both of those views exist in the world. And some people are somewhere on that spectrum. Some artists, they will not separate. Some artists, they will separate, and it's like, I get it. It's a very human thing to want to judge a situation, to want to be able to consider yourself moral and upstanding and the authority on certain things, that your opinion is based in this kind of like deep understanding of the world and the universe and what's right and what's wrong. And I think that a lot of times those opinions are influenced by inputs that we can't verify, by things that we can't fact check, by things that we have not witnessed with our own eyes, right? And it's sometimes it's your gut instinct, sometimes it's your intuition, but I think that sometimes it's like going along to get along.
She going along to get along is crazy.
Right? Like somebody will disparage somebody, and instead of being like, I don't know if that's true, you just be like, oh, yeah, I heard that too. Which to me is wild.
It's crazy in that context, but just going along to get along in general, that has multiple layers and multiple
it really
meanings.
does though, right?
That's crazy.
Because like all of the stuff that's coming out now, and we talking about hip hop, we might as well go all the way into it. All the stuff that's coming out now about Puffy, P. Diddy,
Love,
Brother Love, you know, and nobody's saying nobody witnessed this stuff. Nobody's saying this was a big secret. They're like, oh no, it was a well-known thing.
Yeah, everybody
in the industry.
People were there. It was parties.
It was parties with lots of people there, and there's so many witnesses.
They done said you go into a room, you might see
and
some
people
things.
are coming out now, particularly on podcasts, and giving their testimony of things that they've seen or things that they've. And it's like, do I believe you? Because now it's okay to say these things.
It's out there.
Now that it's out there, but like, why weren't you one of the people that helped to bring it out?
Because it was probably normalized. They probably grew up in that kind of scene, especially in the industry. When you're new in the industry and this is what you're being introduced to at a young, early in your career. A lot of the people that are talking about the parties or, yo, I remember that. Oh yeah, they're older people. They're people that have been around for a long time. So, it becomes normal. Like, oh yeah, we know P. Diddy be doing a thing,
And so if that's a thing, right, that like you can see these things that other people wouldn't consider normal to the point where you don't tell anybody about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what I mean by
become part of the problem.
That's what I mean by going along to get along, right? It's like, we know that happens, but we don't talk about it because maybe we couch in, people just wouldn't understand, or, that's just the way it is over there, or blah, blah. And it's like, okay, but you can stand in judgment now
on the outside, but when you're there, you play
right
along
and
to
it's
get
like,
along.
So how can people say that I have this reliable internal moral compass that's never wrong?
But are they responsible for speaking up? Do you believe someone has a responsibility to speak up if they know that there is a harm being caused?
This is a deep, deep question, right? Because like there's a lot of power dynamics that go into that. There's definitely a lot of money dynamics, which also plays into the power dynamics. There's the aspect of like, will you be believed or not believed? And if you're not believed and you make these accusations against someone who's powerful, it's
really
a wrap
for you.
Right? And so like the Me Too movement, all that stuff was like really, really seminal and important because without that collective action, people were speaking up and being shunned, being shut out of the industry. Not even way before Me Too, right? Sinead O'Connor went on SNL, height of her career, held up a picture of the Pope and ripped it in half. She was done. It was a wrap. Talk about somebody that got canceled, right?
Dang.
And not too long after that, all the child sex abuse allegations for the Catholic Church became public because it wasn't like those accusations hadn't been made before. And
Martyr.
It was found out,
she had to do it for the change.
And it was found out that there was a
Sacrifice.
whole system of like shifting these abusers around to different parishes and this, that, the other, and the third, right? And she sacrificed her platform, right? Because it was something that she truly believed in. Yeah. It's wild. And, rest in peace to Sinead O'Connor, who passed recently, but literally nobody went back when all this stuff was coming up with the Catholic Church and was like, yo, we got to re-platform Sinead O'Connor. It's just like, nah, you just stay in the dustbin. And the people who remembered, right? But like, nah, you just got to stay in the dustbin over there.
Yeah, because especially if you're going after such top ranked individuals, you got to be careful.
Right.
Exactly. You have to be careful because you will see you later.
And so that's the thing, right? Like people may feel they have a responsibility to speak up, but they may feel
afraid.
like by fulfilling their responsibility,
They sacrifice themselves.
they make it worse for themselves. They maybe make it worse for people that have been victimized. They make it harder for other people who also want to speak up.
Yeah.
To speak up.
Well, here's my message to all of y'all out there that see the harm done and don't say nothing. You're a part of the problem, especially if you're on the flip side of that, and then you're chastising somebody else for similar or whatever. Like, you can't play both sides. All of y'all playing both sides out here. Pick a side, pick a side.
Hey, I'm just saying, right?
And
like,
stand on it. Like, if that's how you feel, then feel that way across the board. Too many people out here picking and choosing. You know what I mean? Like, fuck out of here.
You're saying you're looking for moral consistency?
Be consistent. They give out awards for that apparently out here. The most consistent. Yeah, they
most
do.
Consistent? Oh, wow.
These award shows now got most consistent awards. Like,
that's
really?
deep. Okay.
But it's about how you appear. Are you appearing to the public to be most consistent?
Well, we got to have a whole...
Morally consistent is not what they're awarding you on. I want y'all to understand and distinguish the difference, okay? It's not a moral consistency.
Oh, man. We got to have a whole discussion about these...
How consistent
these awards
are you at being seen?
These awards and award shows again, because we have so many professional and unprofessional opinions about how that stuff goes down, fam.
I have mad unprofessional opinions. I am the unprofessional opinion of this podcast. So yeah, welcome to the Phree Game Podcast. This is brilliant segue. Because it be podcasts we forget to just say where we're at, who we are. We just be talking.
Not the
the
unprofessional opinion of this podcast.
You feel me? I am the unprofessional opinion of this podcast. My name is Phree. You are at the Phree Game Podcast, and I am like enamored by my man to my right, your left.
What up? It's your man's JG. What it do? What it do?
Yeah, I mean, JG be here with me all the time, and we kick it week after week, and we do this consistently.
I don't know what that horn was. I don't.
We don't have the thingy.
My brain went sideways.
Yeah,
that was not the.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh man.
It's what you felt. It's okay.
Okay.
If you can feel it, you can speak it.
Yeah.
Bang. But you are at the Phree Game Podcast, and we love y'all, and we thank you for tuning in, and we just talking about these things, because I don't be understand. I don't know. It's a weird time to live in. I'm sure people 100 years ago were saying the same thing, and 100 years before that, they're probably saying the same thing.
It's always a weird time to be alive for people who...
To be a human in general.
For people who are awake to this human experience. Because I think that oftentimes I encounter people who have allowed themselves to be lulled to sleep by the cues that they get from culture, from capitalism, from tradition, from their upbringing, from whatever. And like, you know, we got this recurring theme apparently in this episode of going along to get along, but like sometimes going along is survival, right? Like it's, you know, if you're someone who is in a position of not having power of self-determination, sometimes you go along to survive. You know what I mean? And like, I want to make sure that like, you know, it's not a judgment. I get it. I get why people go along.
We got to talk about how you make the transition from survival to living, like existing in joy and peace. Like, what does it mean to not be in survival mode? Like, I feel like every time I'm like, yo, when I was in survival mode, yeah, that was when I feel like I'm still in survival mode. like, when does survival mode end? How do you know when you're not in survival mode? Do you have the answer, Sway? Sway JG?
You don't have the answer, Sway. Not in survival mode it's a concept that I'm just not familiar with. I think that survival mode has like, you know, degrees, right? Like, am I on level 1 survival mode, which is almost near cruise control? Or am I on level 20 survival mode, You know what I'm saying? The sky is falling, and I better gather all my loved ones and everything that's valuable to me and find a safe place for them because it's just about to go down.
Survival mode on cruise control is crazy. Like, we just wake up and you just on survival mode. Like, from the moment we open our eyes to we close them.
To me,
because where's safety at? And safety is subjective.
To me, safety comes in small moments.
That's what I mean. The consistency ain't there with the safety.
Yeah.
Because even you could be in your home where you would feel the most safe. And how many times we done heard stories where strays then went through walls, then
Listen,
like,
fam,
where can you be safe?
But even with your loved ones and all of us and our different traumas and triggers and et
You
cetera,
ain't
et cetera,
safe.
someone that you feel safe with could make you feel unsafe in a given moment, you know? And it's just like, bro, like, I'm hopeful in certain ways that we can create a society where we don't have to be in survival mode. But I do also feel like there are some people who don't feel like they're in survival mode because their level of awareness of how crazy shit is or how instantly crazy shit could get is not the same as my level of awareness of it, right? Like, I'm hyper aware of that stuff from life experience, from being Black in America, from, you know, whatever, right? And so it's like, there's always a calculation in my mind, you know, whenever I walk into a space, even when I'm sitting at home alone, a calculation in my mind of like, okay, what are the risk factors here? And that's what I mean about, like, even on cruise control, there's still survival mode because I will notice things without consciously noticing that I notice them. But then as soon as I turn my conscious mind to it, it's like, oh yeah, I've already considered that, and that, and that, and that, and that, and that, right? And it just takes up so much emotional and mental space that it's just like, yeah, man, a lot of my spiritual practice therefore has to be focused on undoing that tension that builds up. It's like a spring on a watch being wound too tight, right? Like, eventually the spring breaks and the watch stops working. So before that spring breaks, you got to find a way to release the tension, you know? And for me, that's through my spiritual practice. That's through my art. That's through my creativity, through singing, through meditation, right? And like through seeking God, through seeking to understand myself, turning inward. Sometimes just like staring and being in awe of nature, you know, looking for the inspiration that will allow me to have that artistic outlet so that that energy, that tension can be released. And I can at least go back to my baseline, you know? And I think that even in the midst of survival, there can be happiness, there can be joy, there can be enjoyment, there can be laughter, there obviously can be love, right? Like you can resonate with the people that you're with, you can resonate with the experience that you're having in those moments. But I think that it takes being able to really detach from everything that's not in that moment, you know? I be sounding mad Buddhist sometimes, and I'm not even a Buddhist, but like I've read a lot about it. You know, shout out to all my Buddhist homies. But yeah, it's funny, right? Because like that idea of momentary joy even is just a wild concept, but one that we've become so accustomed to in these times that we're living that, like, you say it and people immediately are like, yeah, that's a good idea. It's like, well, why not continuous nonstop joy? And that sounds like a crazier idea than like just trying to find momentary joy.
Do you believe the notion that joy is a choice? or happiness is a choice. You choose happiness.
I think that happiness can result from our choices. I think that in a certain way, satisfaction is a choice. Absolutely. Right? And I think that dissatisfaction is also a choice. But I don't think that they're choices that you should make lightly. Right? Because I think that sometimes people choose to be satisfied with shit that is robbing them of their joy. Because they're looking for something else. They're looking for security, or they're looking for stability, or they're looking for normalcy, or they're looking for acceptance, right? And like, because they're not prioritizing joy, and I'm not saying like indulge every hedonistic urge that you have, right? Because I'm not a hedonist, so I don't think that that's the path to joy either, right? But I think that investing some time in understanding what it is that really brings you joy, and then figuring out how to maximize that, rather than treating joy as a special occasion, treating it as a goal, I think can shift your perspective a little bit in what you accept in your life, what you accept from other people, what you accept from yourself, right? Because sometimes we block our own selves from experiencing joy. On some subconscious level, we believe we don't deserve it. We're not deserving, or, you know, we're not good enough. We're not smart enough. We're not, I see this happen a lot of times with performers. They'll have an amazing performance, and everybody will tell them, yo, that was an amazing performance. It's one of the best experiences that I ever had. And in that moment that they're performing, at times they're feeling the joy, but also they're feeling I could have done that better. Oh, maybe that wasn't as good. Maybe I would have done this differently. Maybe I would have. And it's like, it's difficult to prioritize joy in a society that tells you you have to earn joy. Right?
Well, I mean, I think that that's kind of similar to what you just said about joy being a goal. It's kind of what I thought of, was like, well, when I look at joy as a goal, as opposed to like, okay, I know it's moment to moment, but if I'm looking at it like this end game or this end goal.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I that's what it sounded like to me. That's how I envisioned it.
Say more about that.
Like, if my goal is joy, then I'm continuously working for the achievement of joy. So like, what is the continuous, like,
I see.
Okay, well, my goal is joy. So now I work every day. What's the work today to find joy? Tomorrow, what's the work today to find joy?
I think that is okay. Yeah. And I think that that's the way that we've been programmed, is that reaching your goal is a reward. And I guess what I'm saying is we have to deprogram from that, right?
Well, I like what you were saying earlier about joy being, so like, it comes with the decisions you make, right? So it's the decisions you make that brings the joy.
Right.
So like, you can set yourself up by way of the decisions you make every day to be in this pocket of joy.
But see,
So I
don't know. I feel like I'm still not clearly communicating it. And I think it's difficult, right? Because like, when I say goal, it definitely, I hear what you're saying. It sounds like achievement. It sounds like reward, right? But it's more like when we treat the thing that we really want as a reward that we get eventually, what we're really doing is making work the goal. Right? Because it's like, oh yeah, work is the goal. Because if I do enough work,
then I'm going to get this
then I'll
reward.
feel like I deserve the reward. And then I can really enjoy the reward.
So then you can't get up and choose joy every day. So then these bullshit ass me, you can't. You could choose
I think that you have
you
to
could choose the vision of. You could be like, all right, today I'm gonna do
I
the
think
work to get joy
it's
into my
interesting,
life,
right? Because like, if you look at certain movements, especially the esoteric movements of the 60s and 70s, people lump them all together into those hippies, right? And like this idea that like, oh, maybe consumerism is robbing me of my joy. Maybe capitalism is robbing me of my joy. Maybe, right? And like the idea that like always striving is what's separating you from your joy, right? And so if the goal is not, and the reason why I say make the goal joy as opposed to make the joy money or make the joy financial security or make the joy or make the goal stuff that you can have. Oh man, I feel like I'll be really, really happy if I can get that limited edition thing, blah, blah, right? It's very, very interesting. We were talking about Kanye. We talk about, some of the wave that he was on, particularly early in his career. And he has this song, All Falls Down, right? He talks about, fuck the police, that's how I treat them. We buy our way out of jail, but we can't buy freedom. We buy a lot of clothes when we don't really need them, things we buy to cover up what's inside, right? Because they made us love their wealth and hate ourselves. That's why Shorty's holler where the ball is at.
All right, you just spit the whole verse. Great.
Well, that's a little bit of it, right? But it's like it's a very insightful thing because it's like, oh, if I can demonstrate that I'm successful, then I'll feel good about myself. But why can't you just focus on feeling good about yourself?
Because we don't know what that is, and the things that we think feel good, like you just finished or saying earlier, that aren't often what's best for us, but they feel good in the moment. So if I spend however much on a pair of shoes that's going to bring me joy in the moment, is that something long term that I'm,
but is that bringing you joy, or is that just fulfilling your programming?
What's joy then? Isn't joy fulfilling your programming to some degree? Whatever the programming is, insert different programming there. But like,
I mean, I think that like,
isn't joy if we're talking about it from what is, I guess it's subjective.
I mean,
joy is subjective to everybody.
I mean, to me,
different people.
if I were to try to state it in like a kind of like almost poetic way, right? Like, joy is a weightlessness, a lightness of being, right? And so a lot of times I think that we take accomplishment and joy and we are like, oh, if I accomplish something, that will bring me joy. And I think that sometimes like, I think that having a day where you didn't have to do anything might bring you more joy than a day where you worked really, really hard and got $1,000 at the end of the day and went out to spend that $1,000 on whatever you want to try to undo the fact that you hated how you spent the whole day working so very hard, right?
I know some people that will not hate working all day to get the reward at the end of their $1,000.
I understand what you're saying.
Yes, and feel super accomplished and feel
And I guess what I'm saying is like a sense of accomplishment and a sense of joy to me are not the same thing.
I don't know, man. I think joy is subjective. I don't think we can tell anybody what their pocket of joy is, especially living in this 3D world in human flesh. Like it is really hard and challenging to live every day. And if somebody finds joy in spending whatever on whatever or do whatever to get that endorphin rush, as long as it's not.
Yeah, I mean,
as long as it's not harming other people in the process.
Now you're really getting to the thing, right? Because like
that's what it is.
If what we're seeking is an endorphin rush, then
isn't that what it is? You don't get an endorphin rush from joy. I imagine joy.
I mean, if we're seeking an endorphin rush, there are so many easier ways to get it than
joy.
Really understanding yourself and what motivates you in life. Because you can just let the endorphin rush motivate you.
So you
which
can't.
Is what capitalism is.
Wait. So I can't know what I want in my life and all the things and still want an endorphin rush?
I don't understand what you're saying.
You just said that if I am seeking endorphin rushes, then that, you said something about it, about me or the person not wanting or not knowing what they want out of life, or what did you just say?
I was saying if all you want is the endorphin rush, there are easier ways to get the endorphin rush than figuring out who you really are and what it is that you really want out of life. I do think that figuring out who you really are and what it is that you want out of life and pursuing that can give you probably the best endorphin rush that you ever had in your life.
But if I figure me out and know what I want out of this life, you're telling me that I still, like, they both can't exist at the same time? I can't know what I want out of life?
That's the opposite of what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying that figuring out who you are and what it is that you really want out of life is difficult because it requires you to deprogram. It requires you to be self-reliant. It requires you to be honest with yourself. All things that people who have grown up in the society are not naturally inclined to do. So if we get endorphin rushes from other things that are easier to attain, then it keeps us from taking that journey.
Who said anything about it being easier? I'm saying joy being an endorphin rush. I don't know how we got there, but I'm saying joy is like.
I don't think that joy is the endorphin rush. I think you can get endorphins from joy, but I think you can get endorphins from things that are not joy.
All right. Well,
because some people get endorphins from pain.
Yeah, masochists.
No, not just masochists.
BDSM.
Not just masochists, though. People who are not all the way on that end of the spectrum get endorphin rush. It's a survival response. It's a reflex. So you're
saying some people enjoy pain?
It's difficult being human.
Some people enjoy pain and they're not masochists.
I think that some people have a singular experience of something that is extremely painful, breaking an arm, falling off of something high, that gives them an endorphin rush to override them passing out or to override, right?
So what does that mean?
To balance out their adrenaline.
If somebody enjoys that type of pain, what does that say about that person?
You mean they seek it out?
Maybe. Or not even seek it out, but like don't really get too moved about like breaking a finger or like it's like, ooh, they broke a finger.
I would say their brain chemistry is not the same as mine. I do not enjoy pain. It's not my thing. I have a high tolerance for it, but I'm definitely tolerating it, not enjoying it.
So you're not a
no judgment.
You're not a kink.
You don't
BDSM type person. You don't
not
like
that I
whips
know
and
of.
chains
That's
and...
not been unlocked in me. If it's there,
hey,
it's hidden away somewhere. But nah, like no shade. People don't determine their own brain chemistry. You know what I'm saying? But it's not what I'm on.
We gotta do it one more time.
You are now in tune to the Phree.